Okie dokie. So, good evening, everyone. Let me first apologize. I think I did a typo in the announcement with the date. Nope, I went back and looked. With the date regarding today's class time. So those of you all were in class, we talked about connecting and meeting today on Wednesday, but the announcement said 1/21, which is actually a Sunday. So obviously we are not meeting on Sunday. So thank you to those who showed up. I did have one or two who was like, I thought it meant we were online or something else or what have you. And kind of go from there. All right. So were you able to look at any of the recordings from last week? Okay, so go back to look at the recordings for last week. First of all, say hello, introduce yourself, and then I'll have everyone else to say their name. But great. Just give your names really quickly so he knows who you are.
Taylor.
Oh, introduce yourself. This is your first day too.
Yeah. I'm Taylor. Okay, yes, that's fair. I'm Taylor. I'm the
Great. So now that everybody knows everybody, again, Canvas will be your best friend. So if you've missed a day or if something happens and you happen to miss a day, I try my best to record on Zoom so that you can stay abreast and sort of up to date with what's happening in class, okay? I also try my best to stay according to the syllabus. And in there, a couple of pages down is what I call the course schedule. And this week we are talking about project management, okay? So we'll hit right in to it. There are a couple of links that I will put into the sort of a module rather, for week 2, because this is where we are. There are many phases of project management. We're going to talk about the 5 main phases. There are a couple of different scholarly research articles and different things that may have like a 7 or a 9 phase. We're going to talk about the main 5 today, okay? All right. So before I do that, let me ask the question. When you hear the term project management, what is it that you think about? What comes to mind? It could be a phrase, it could be a statement, it could be a task, it could be anything. What is it that you think about? Yes.
A presentation or something.
A presentation? Okay. So business particular, okay.
Like a production.
A production in general. Okay. Anything else? Yeah. Coordination? Yes. Ladies? I want to hear from you, something else.
What's the question again?
Come on. Okay. No, I ain't fooling with you, Taylor. Okay, blueprint. Think about it.
Okay, it is like the blueprint. It's how you start something. You can't start a project halfway through. You have to start at the beginning. You have to get your ingredients, your materials, and know what it is that you're trying to execute X amount of months, money, time afterwards.
Great. It is all of those things. Literally, it is the managing of a project. It could be various projects. It could be a production in particular or what have you. But what I really want you all to think about with project management is the many dots, meaning the many tasks that make it up, that make up the thing, whatever that project is, whatever the production is, whatever the program is, or what have you. It is the many little things, okay? The micro that makes the macro, all right? Here, within this article, they talk a lot about Project Management Institute. So you will hear folk that will say that they are certified through this sort of agency, this institute, this entity. Different programs cost different depending on where you are with the PMI. But folk go through this Project Management Life Cycle Institute to be certified in project management. And similar to your accountant having certain letters behind their name, or even in the field we are in, be it your casting director, your director, even certain designers are part of a union, and that's sort of those initials behind their name mean something, that they've gone through certain protocols, certain training, or what have you to get to that. So does a certified project manager, okay? So why are we talking about project management in the producers workshop? Because when you are producing, all that you are doing is full of many projects, literally full of many tasks. And you have to consider each task a particular project, okay? Because each task will go through these phases, and we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through it. So when we're dealing with the project management life cycle, we're going to be talking about, like I said, the 5 main stages. Hello, hello. And so we'll go into that. I'm going to just show you this here just because it sort of lists them all here. Those 5 main phases that we're talking about are the initiation or initiating phase, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closure. These are the 5 main phases of project management. And all that you're doing within production, within producing, fall in one of these categories. Okay, but don't just think about the production itself. For example, with Department of Theater Arts, we are dealing with the new work of Sonnets and Soul. So that could be considered the production, the project, but there are various pieces within, right? Some of those phases of production, right? The pre-production, the production, the post. Each of those walk through each of these phases. And then if you take one item in pre-production, what's one item that would be considered pre-production?
Building the script.
Building the script. What else? Casting. What else?
The costume designer.
Design concepts. And that one thing we just named, any one of them would go through its own phase. Yes? You guys get what I'm saying? Okay. So that's very important to understand, because oftentimes we think about the production as a whole, yes, but you have to tunnel and funnel those things down to those right department heads, crew chiefs, those leads, those crew members, et cetera, so forth and so on. Okay, so again, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and then closing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about each one of them. And then we're going to take one of our current productions here, and we'll kind of walk through one of those things in each of those areas, just really quickly. Yes? Everybody good so far? I know, freezing. I'm telling you, we're going to zip through because I'm cold. All right. So some of the things to think about within that initiating phase, we brought up in some of those things with pre-production work. Some of those different things that are happening with casting, different things that are happening with selecting your producing team. As I mentioned to you all, in some cases, if you've been to a production, especially on Broadway or something that's touring, if you've even been to like the National Theater here, you look at one of those programs, there's pages of producers, because there are different tiers about regarding how much they are contributing financially and or the work that they're contributing. If you're watching a film and you actually sit to watch the credits, which you all should get in the habit of doing, supporting the peers that are working behind the scenes and putting up the work, you will see again a slew of producers. If you are watching a television series and you actually don't skip intro on Netflix and you see those opening credits, you will see executive producers, you'll see line producers, you'll see music producers, because everyone has a particular role and lane and lens, and their role and responsibility based on their tasks are going to fall in those 5 phases we were just talking about. Yes? So with initiating, one of the things they talk about is your project charter or stakeholder registers, just different things to get yourself set up. Okay, what is the project? What is the framework? What's happening here? What are we agreeing to? How much are we agreeing to spend? How much of a sort of buffer are we giving ourselves financially to cover different things? Those buffers could be, as you know, you look at a flight today, it's going to be different in 2 more days. If you schedule it tonight versus in 2 more days, it's also going to increase. Those different things that can happen, you want to have a contingency within your budget as well. So these sort of charters, these sort of frameworks, so to speak, boundaries we're going to put into place for the different lenses and area. It's also about determining who's doing what. not just because you do it well. That's an important part, right? You do this well. We want you on our team because you do this well. We want you on our team because you plan to actually complete and finish it, right? If you're saying that you're going to be the music producer and we're looking for X amount of sound because we're going to this particular area or that genre or that time frame, we need you to stick to that. Right? If we're talking about something in the 60s or 70s, we don't want to hear something that's current day because it does not correlate, does not connect with. So we're paying you to be sure that all of that within music production is happening in a timely manner. So those different things are sort of spoken on, like they list here, deliverables, objectives, resources needed, milestones, planning out what's happening, what's doing, cost estimates, risk and issues, right? This could be legal, this could be ethical. We've mentioned in particular when we're talking about marketing specifically and just in general with production, just because it's legal, it doesn't mean that it's ethical, right? So those are things that you talk about with risk, what's happening. Risk could be with personnel. With social media nowadays, everybody is a journalist. And so all it takes is one post, one tweet, and boom, that's what happens, huh? Well, that's the way they look at it.
Why is it my name?
Why is it your major? I'm just saying. I mean, someone can say the truth about someone acting or directing. Someone can say, well, they didn't go through the training I went through. They didn't go through the rigor I went through, but they will call themselves what they're walking through, right? So, to that point, however, because of that, people can be a risk. Do we want to work with so-and-so? They just experienced this issue. So-and-so just experienced a divorce. So-and-so just experienced a case, a situation. This case is pending. Do we wait before we continue casting? Do we hold off? How much can we hold off? There's a deadline. There's always a larger deadline that someone's saying this needs to be in theaters by, or this needs to hit the road by, this needs to start touring by. So can we hold off? Do we push forward? Do we buy this person out and move on? What is the cost in doing that? If they've already signed the contract, what does that look like? What loopholes are in the contract that allow us to pull out? If we pull out, are we still required to pay? These are all of those things in risk and issues, right? Okay, so those are certain things that all happen in that initiating phase. Then we get to the actual planning. What exactly are we doing? What is this? But come on in. What's this production? What's happening? How are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? Right? Timing is everything, especially for even live events. What's happening in the city? Do I want to go up against Georgia Avenue Day? Does that make sense? What's happening? Are we farther out in the DMV where it won't matter? All of those things make a difference. If I'm doing something downtown, does it make sense to do something when there's a major concert coming into town? Probably not. These are the things that you talk about when you talk about the when, the time of year, the season, whatever the case may be. A lot of those horror movies come out around October, right? These are different things that people decide to do and not do. Yeah, some Christmas movies even come out in July for that whole Christmas in July moment, right? These are different things people choose to do. When is important, right? How will we know when we're done? What's your benchmark? Right? How are you sort of evaluating yourself throughout the planning phase so you know when to pivot? All right, so those are just different things that you have to think about, all right, in the planning phase. Executing phase, team development, stakeholder engagement, quality assurance, communications, client management. Now we're actually doing the work. We done brainstormed, we done went out for drinks, we done ate around lunch, we done did the chips and sandwiches, we done did the bring your own lunch on the line, we've done all of that. Now we're at the business of doing the work. Now we're engaging the external partners that we need. Now we're engaging additional stakeholders. These may be other producers that are involved, like executive producers who may typically come to set just to check in on something or come into the room to check in on something. These are the different things. How is this happening? These stakeholders could be, for an example, let's say Professor McElroy with Sonnets and Souls was not on faculty at Howard University. Say he was still in Michigan on faculty and we still wanted to do his work. He would be a stakeholder in which we would need to say, hey, come down. Are we maintaining the integrity of your work? Are we doing that? Now, he happens to just be here now, so it's just a matter of him being in the room to do that, right? But these are the different stakeholders that are in the space, right? Whose story is this, right? We're thinking about, okay, the color purple recently. Have anybody seen the latest version? Okay, no, somebody said no. Some people say yes, 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 no, 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 okay. I was getting ready to ask for those who said no, why? I'm just curious. There's no rhyme or reason. Some are just not interested, and that's cool too.
I just haven't really been a movie goer recently.
Got you. I just haven't seen it, just haven't seen it. He says too long. Okay. But to that point, it's a musical film. Yeah, I've seen none of it because all of it's too long. What? Stand up and watch it. No, I'm just teasing. So listen. So with that, though, consider, yes, this is the sort of musical film adaptation of it, which has pulled from all of the various adaptations before it, i.e. the producing Broadway show, the original film, and the book. And in all of these elements, one of the key stakeholders is who?
The writer of the book.
The writer of the book, Alice Walker herself.
And then
right?
be the ones that wrote the music.
Yeah. So these are your bigger stakeholders when anytime you're doing something and pulling something, sometimes just inviting them to the table allows room and agency for you to breathe and grow and do, right? So those are just, just different things to keep in mind. So people, I want to close, hold, and safeguard, and this is my thing, and no one else can touch it. And it's like, really, this belongs to someone else before you. Okay, unless it is a true original work. Right. And even then, giving homage to whomever and whatever inspirations you're pulling from. And we'll talk a little bit more about that next week within research and development. Okay. All right. That's stage 3, executing phase. Right. Then we go into the monitoring and controlling phases. And let me be clear, because there's always the pre, during, and post within production or events or whatever's happening, these phases don't always have a hard stop necessarily. Some things overlap. Sometimes you got to go back to executing something because during the monitoring and controlling phase, you say, something's off, something's happening here, what have you. You have to go back to that initiating. So what was plan B? Because this person not working. Something's happening on set, or, we've had the stories, you see the different articles that go on. You have folk who are considered harder to work with in regards to, cast or what have you, or things of that nature, right? So those are different things that you have to layer on when you're dealing with, the monitoring and controlling, right? This is how you're staying on budget. How are you staying on time with different timelines and deadlines? Again, in that planning phase, did you build out time? You're coming to DC to film in the spring semester in the dead of winter. Did you account for a snow day or 3 or 5? Did you account for that? What does that look like and mean, right? What does that look like to have another week of your cast being in town and in a room, and car service and craft services, and the list goes on and on and on, right? So again, monitoring and controlling, seeing how all of that's going. Another portion I want to include in this now, and we talked a little bit about it for those who were with me last semester. We've been speaking more and more about wellness. And we talked about it in the hospitality assignment that the class had last semester. And when you hear the term hospitality, i.e. producers, this is not just about the food that you lay out in front of people. This is not just about the 5-star hotel or the car service that you have for them. This is about how you troubleshoot when something comes up. This is how you ensure that from the time they land, or even before, and even that they leave and exit, that you have a wonderful, friendly, creative, collaborative, connecting environment, a space. Yes.
So how do you do that if the problem is coming from the top and not the bottom?
So that depends on the position you're in and who the person is.
I'm second in command.
So if you're second in command, you should be able to talk to the first in command behind closed doors to say, look, well, I don't know about all that part, but listen, if you are second in command, you should be able to speak to the first in command primarily, at least the first time behind closed doors to say, look, this is what's happening. This is the energy that you're bringing. I don't know if you know or if you do know, but these are some of the things that's happening into the space. You may find out through this session that something is actually going on with said person and they thought that they were masking it and they weren't. So this was not to be malicious or what have you. This just work. My home life showed up at work, right? You may find out or recall if you work with this person, because if you're second in command, you may have worked with this person for a while. This is who they are, and you need to address that. Like, this not working. Again, when we had this conversation last set, still not working now. Those conversations happen. Consider bringing in a mediator, right? Hold that thought. Someone like a Dr. Ballard who's here to assist with wellness and things of that nature could come in and assist with mediating, with talking with said person, right? Depending on how bad something has blown up, you may lose a day. You might have to clear the space because no one's in the right space to work, depending on what said person has done, right? And I'm giving all of these scenarios because I don't know the full situation, right? We don't know. We don't know. But that could be, and there's another caveat. If this person above you and you being second, are you all family? Is there a relationship? But for some, it could be. If there's a husband and wife couple, if there's a mother and son, if there's a what have you, a cousin, there could be something else that could cause you to be either biased or unbiased to said situation.
I guess, well, specifically, because the question is tailored to my own experience, but like, I guess the problem is that what I'm worried about is the whole thing because this person sits at a certain position and those that are below us, like I'm trying to keep everything afloat. And what I'm worried about is just everybody like dissipating and the whole thing just goes kaput. Because of that, if they don't, after a conversation has been had, mediator present or not, if nothing changes because.
Yeah, you got to let that person know what's at stake. And so, say what you're getting ready to say, then I have another point to that, but go ahead.
Production, right? Long story short, it's been spotlight this game show. We had a very big issue with our director and like the director not, like doing what they were supposed to do. So pretty much it just became like a collective of us that were under the director having conversations like this person can remember. And eventually, we got one of the higher ups in spotlight to get involved, and that became a conversation and gave her like another chance. But eventually she got scrapped from the show. So us as like undermen, we scrapped the director because the director was not available. It got so bad to a point we were supposed to have like 5 episodes about us in this year. We only were able to get 2 because our director was so not present and like anything. I was just a PA in like the game show. I was there for more meetings than the director. And
that'd be the hot moving fee. I'm not in spotlight. I'm one of the Disney storytellers. So.
And then this goes back to the project at stake. This goes back to the importance, and we talked a little bit about it just kind of in our conversation, just briefly with mission and who you align yourself with. Hello, who do you align yourself with? And don't get me wrong, sometimes you don't know because some folk, and most do, talk a good game and you don't see it until you're already in it. And you have to deal with and learn what you have to deal with.
Great idea.
And learn. Yeah, but having that honest conversation about what's at stake here and the goal. This isn't just, fairy dust flying around. The weight of Disney Storyteller and the goal in which the reason why they want to see these projects is to be able to like something so much that they take it to the next level of production and producing. That's literally. So this goes back to, here we go, wellness, what's happening, check in with your team members, all those different things. Are you building in time just to check in? And we had another colleague who did a show at Ford's Theater last semester, and she stated that they opened up every rehearsal with, How are you and what do you need today? How are you and what do you need today? And somebody's like, I didn't have enough time to get coffee. It could be as simple as I didn't have enough time to get coffee. I just need coffee. Someone else is like, I just need an extra 10 minutes to gather my thoughts and then I can come into the room. The director knows that information and can say, you know, we're going to start with scene 3, but let's kind of go to the end of that to give X 10 minutes time. Just the little bit of difference that makes, as opposed to pushing through, and just could have given that person 10 minutes and would have flipped around and had a more productive rehearsal space. And we don't always have the room to do that. I understand that. There are times where you can watch someone's interview and they're like, "Child, we shot that in 17 days. You're like, what? That was fast. So you probably didn't have time to say, how are you, what do you need? Because everybody kind of knew that they needed to move forward and move fast. We didn't have a lot of time. But when you have the time to build those moments and those elements in, do that. People want to know that you care about them, that especially as artists, their vessel is why you're getting a good product, them being what, you know? But you also have to monitor the folk that come in with their drama all the time, right? And sometimes you have to be that person that's like, look, we love you, but come on. Figure that out before you hit that door and cross the threshold. And so those are the tough conversations that you have to have, oftentimes with your peers. If you're in leadership positions and roles now, that will not change. You're not just a producer over someone just 10 and 15 years younger than you. Sometimes it's peer to peer, or sometimes you are producing work for someone that may be older than you on that stage. And you're gonna have to, you know, grandma didn't say, put your big girl drawers, put your big boy drawers on and have that conversation seriously. Yeah. Okay, any questions about that phase? All right. Closing phase. All right, this has to deal with the post-production. This could deal with certain editing things that are happening. Somebody might put editing into monitoring and controlling, because again, that closeout phase may be once it's done, once it's packaged, once it's what have you, right? But at the end of the day, you are dealing with the delivery of said project and how that is closing and that's said and being done. The reason why I also mentioned to you the importance of understanding that some things overlap. If you are on tour, in some cases, you are initiating a new cast over the top of a current one. Maybe half of the cast is staying, or in some cases, ensemble members stay, but some of those lead roles where it takes quite a heavier hit on the body, they're like, I'm good, got to head out. So some of that overlaps, and you're bringing in a new cast, and you're bringing in, you know, some different people. If you are touring and you're going from different theater to theater or space to space, you are bringing in a different crew. You're working with a different technical director that's at that space. You're working with a different front of house manager that requires different things. You may be in a different city that has a different regulation. Right now, a lot of cities and states are obviously optional with mask wearing, but certain theaters have different rules. That policy may be depending on the cast. Like our production manager show last semester, and the cast was like, we kind of want our audience in mask. And so someone else was like, I mean, if we enforce that, I don't know that we'll get a large audience. They came to agree that some shows would be masked and some shows wouldn't. I did another show, the cast was like, mask, sorry, we're out of masks, we need them in masks. And that's what it was. So we put that information out. And then of course we provided masks for anyone who, you know, may have forgotten or just didn't know about it when they came into the door. So these are the things that you have to think about, right? All of those different things. Part of closing phases is also about the postmortems. Those meetings are so important. I know people are like, oh, I don't want to have those closeout meetings. I don't want to, but you learn so much. There are certain things that maybe happen across departments that maybe didn't come up in the weekly meeting, but comes up in the postmortem when someone says, you know, I really didn't feel heard. I often brought this up and often brought that up. And then we had to deal with X, Y, and Z on tour because no one thought about what have you. Someone could say, we really went over budget with this costume because no one said that this piece had to be hand washed. We thought everything could be dry cleaned and picked up, shipped off and picked up at the next city, and it wasn't. These different jewels or these different pearls or this different sequence or what have you had to be constantly replaced or had to be, these are different things that come up in a post-mortem conversation. Lack of wellness or the fact that we had an awesome time together comes up in these postmortem conversations, and you learn and you evaluate and you self-reflect. And when that next grant comes in or that executive producer comes in with that $200,000 budget or $2 million budget, you say, I'm not working with you, you, and you again. And that's okay. You learn where you are.
They don't have to be.
And then there are times that you learn that you do like working with certain people, or you didn't even know a group, a certain person until you came on to set and deck. So when I'm working as a PM, I often will meet a new designer. I'm like, oh man, they're really dope. Like, this is really cool. Right. And so one of the designers I met with projections was Dylan, and he was able to work with Black Nativity here last semester. So these are ways in which you learn people, you meet people, again, because as we talked about last week, your name is your brand. That's it. That's all you got. That's all you got. So when your name comes up, what does someone say about you? And I've mentioned to you all in particular, like with Professor Parks, he does a 360 survey. And one of the questions he has people ask for each student is, if this student were a product, what would their tagline be? What are people saying about you? What are people saying about the experience you have? Even when something isn't so fun or going your way. Even when it looks a mess, and it is a mess, can they say, but so-and-so was still professional, and so-and-so made, tried their best to make sure we, were able to experience X, Y, and Z. Are they able to say that? Yeah. All right. Oh, so here is a chart in regards to different processes, different groups, different things you can look at. Again, I will post these links up for you so that you have here. This is the article that we just went through. This is another one that's really, really good that also goes through the phases of project management and different things, different sort of bullet points that happen in each of these phases or what have you. Again, they're looking at it from just a business standpoint. Your goal is to translate and transform this information into what would be happening in the role and hat of a producer, in the role of, production, okay? Be it film, be it live, be it, festival style, whatever the case may be. This third one is also a good one regarding, how to avoid certain issues that could pop up. So this is another good read that you can go through a little later. What I like to do is to take something and let's kind of go through what that would look like maybe doing in each of the phases. So it doesn't matter, whatever you all call out, we can kind of roll with it.
Like a play?
It doesn't have to be a play, it could just be a phase of something or a task of some sort. What you saying? Yeah, show, but I'm just saying, just bring up a task for us to think about what needs to kind of happen in each of those phases.
Okay, so right now, like the group that I'm on, we're doing a mini series and we've completed one of the 4 episodes. Now we're getting into the second one. We're in pre-production for that. From all phases, like
Mm-hmm.
has been figured out.
Is your script done at least for episode 2?
Script has been completed. The
Mhm.
director has read it. I think she gave like 1 or 2 minutes, but it's greenlit. We have a budget for that episode.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it needs to be tweaked, but then again, budgets always get tweaked.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
does that help?
Does that help? That's a good one to go through. This is a good one to go through. Okay. They're in episodes. So here we go. Overlap. They're dealing with, you said 5 episodes?
It's 5 episodes in total.
So they're going to do 5 in total. 1 is done and completed, right? But because of a snow day, they missed the opportunity to showcase and present at least episode 1. So that's what I mean by the overlap. So now as the Library of Congress probably looks at their calendar and Cap COFA looks at their calendar to determine when these Disney storytellers happen to be available again, that sort of presentation, display, and showing of episode 1 has to be rescheduled, right? So they're in episode 2 of 5, right? So they're somewhat in the initiating phase. You heard some of the things that she mentioned. What still has to happen? Casting still has to happen. She mentioned maybe sort of a revision and final approval of the budget, so to speak. You see, you have a director.
We have a director, we have a cinematographer, and an AD. So it's like
So what about your space and location?
the location. Because ironically, we're trying to use Iris.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not me, but
Right.
I think this to be me, but. Talking about Chess Alter? Oh, yeah, she'll probably send you to the Department of Theater Arts, but yes. Yeah, so check in with like Chair Salter, Professor Harris, and Mr. Bird. I think they're splitting sort of our production and operations manager's role, because Ms. Fields is no longer with us.
So we still have to get Karen's name.
Mhm.
Our costume designer has already made a deck, and she made a proposed budget for what she would need if the actors don't already have those items in their closet.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think we need to figure out a shooting dates, but that's also.
So what other
depending on
things,
location.
before she says anything else, what other things could possibly fall in initiating that still needs to be initiated and planned out?
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Figure out like the actual location, lighting.
Yeah, I need that location so we can figure out what day we want to shoot.
Because once you pick the location, then you know all of the other elements, right? Where are they getting dressed? What's happening? Do we have access to costume room? Or are they bringing their, set costumes already? Do we have access to a steamer? Do we have access to other things that you need on set and deck immediately? If
It's a cast of speaking roles, 7 people,
mhm.
and then about 20 something extras.
So again, what's happening day of, what's happening when we go, are we responsible for feeding these people? Are we responsible for transporting them to and back? But this goes back into that. If they're not being casted, you don't even know about allergies, right? So all of these things, all of these things come up, right? What are we able to provide? If you have a cast full of pescatarians, your budget has just went up for food automatically because seafood is more expensive. Now, if you got folk that like, I'm good, I get this chicken, a little steak, then you a little bit, come down a little bit more. But all of that matters. It's not just if it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, it's also those snacks in between, bottled water, or at least having access to filtered or purified one. Like those things
Ration some snacks.
matter.
Do not leave them on the table. People just randomly eat a bag of chips and it's like, you're not even hungry and we need this to last for like 3 days of shooting.
Yeah, so with your snacks, with your water, with your drinks, what's happening with makeup? Are you providing makeup or are they responsible for their own basic kit? All of that comes into planning and things because it could tweak your budget. Finalizing the budget depends on all of those different little nuances and things. So let's say we finally got the location. Let's say it is an IRA. We're good because IRA has lighting. And let's just say the plot that will happen to be up after whatever show they'll make it work. Professor Gomes has agreed to help refocus a couple of lighting instruments to make it work for their scenes. Let's say Professor Bethay has said, yes, you have access to the dressing room, so you could use the steamer and just have the students at least provide their own foundation, but we could do some of the other foundation and lashes, but we could do the other right? What's happening with men's hair? Are you responsible for helping them get a cut or whatever the case may be? Those are different things that may come up, but let's say all of that is good. And now we're in execution phase. What are we concerned about? What do we have to be looking out for or what have you? This is your project. So listen, yes, you already did episode 1, so ramp. What's happening? What's happening during execution phase? Uh-huh. Yes. Yes. What else? What else? What else? Yes. Now we got to feed the people for real. So now we need a space. Where are they eating? Where are they sort of lounging in between when they're not being utilized? Where are the makeup stations? Where are you know what I'm saying? So now this thing is actually happening. Okay, we are now actually doing the thing, right? And now we're dealing with the sort of the layover of monitoring and controlling because I need to make sure that I need to make sure that we're on time. I need to make sure that we're hitting, rather be early than late. I need to keep all of that sort of in mind? Post-production, who's editing, who's pulling together, who's, because sometimes in episode 2, although you may have the same team, but you'd have a different cast, what's happening with those credits? Who wants to be sort of credited as what, all of that is happening and being done. How are we closing out?
Well, I'm just gonna add to the execution.
Go ahead.
I guess like troubleshooting, like just in case something happens with like lighting, like costume.
Being prepared, especially with costumes.
My makeup artist probably the day of shooting. Yeah.
Yeah, so this goes back to the importance of every artist at least being able to do a basic look, literally. Now, if you in your script, you have a certain special thing, someone's dying, someone's aged, someone is sickly, like these different looks that you need through makeup, you gotta have your folk. You gotta have your folk, right? That's why it's important to have cross training within any sort of project that you're doing. You cannot have the singular person that does the singular thing. That's why on tour, someone, like for instance, the Tina Turner, but Tina Turner, the musical, when you look at that program, there are folk who are the Ikettes that can also play Tina. There are folk that play Tina that can play the mom. Like, that's what it is. I need you to be able to do more than the one thing, because if someone gets sick or take vacation, I need to be able to swap you all out. Yes.
But there was like this movie and this actor, he needed like, because he couldn't really do what they wanted him to do, so he needed like a therapist before actually doing it. And that means you actually have to go to one, but luckily they had someone that took like psychology in school or something like that, or some therapy in school, so they just also use that person.
That's why they always ask you, what else can you do? Literally. They're not asking you just to do it for free, but they're trying to figure out like, how few people do I have to house? How few people do I have to feed? How few people do I have to have travel on tour? So when you say I can dance and stage manage, they're like, great, thank you. That helps them out. If someone were to get injured and you have to step in, or the fact that we're going to a particular city and someone may be from that city, I might want to push this person more on the poster because that draws that neighborhood or that sort of DMV or whatever area in, centralizes them. Yes.
Like with the game show and stuff like that, we have a lot of things that go on with dance production. So like, you know, depending on the fact of like we have people like multiple things, like our photographer has had to step in to do camera work. I had to step in and do lighting and audio and all these different things because of so many different troubleshooting.
You gotta know, and you have to be prepared. You just have to be like, what could go wrong? Think about like what could go wrong and understand that it actually can go wrong and prepare for exactly that. Yeah. So let's say we're at the closeout. How are we closing and wrapping this up and out? Go ahead,
What's it called? Well, something that I tried to do was just to make sure that whoever was there the day of shooting and whatever their role was, that it was clear, so that when we were editing and we were building out the credits, everybody got the credit that they deserved. Still wasn't always perfect. I think we ended up missing somebody, but we stuck them in there before everybody saw it. What's it called? Making sure to like, you know, thank the people for their work. Nobody on my team is being paid, because we just don't have the money to pay everybody to do this project. Yes, Disney gave us a thick amount of money, but it's really for the project itself. And when you see how fast these numbers fly, so thanking people is like a very big thing, because like you said, being hospital, that's a relationship. If I do something else later on and we work really well, I want you to feel comfortable in working with me again. Rewatching and rewatching and rewatching and rewatching your final product to make sure that every little thing is like absolutely perfect. You'd be surprised how small the detail could be, like just glossed over, and then later in your final product you're like, oh shit, that should not be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Also remembering that each sort of this is why I was telling you all to look at it as task per task, because each department's closeout procedures are different. Whoever's assisted with costuming may be responsible for collecting any items that were borrowed or purchased or what have you, and getting them cleaned and back to, and back to whoever it belonged to. Yes.
Example, I had one of our team members, I was supposed to first pick up the equipment from Howard's rental, and they took too long and I had to go to work, so I ended up, somebody else ended up picking up the equipment that we were gonna use to rent. But then when, there was no discussion about how it was getting back. Maybe I was wrong for assuming that the person who brought it would bring it back.
Yeah.
When we had a conversation, he was like, yeah, I was gonna bring it back, but then this happened. And my response to that was, this happened, but why didn't you tell me?
Communicate. Yeah.
You didn't tell me, and now you're telling me, and I don't have enough time to correct it, and then we ended up having to eat a late fee.
A late fee.
So I was like, don't do that shit.
Yeah.
Don't.
And so here we go with the contingency. Right now, in this case, it was actually just late, but let's say the shoot ran over and you did it another day. Same and the same and the same. Now you could have communicated and it wouldn't have been a late fee. You would have extended your rental and they would have said yes or no, depending on if someone else was sort of in line to receive it. They have to receive it, they have to get it back, they have to clean it, and then get it ready for the next sort of push out, right? So again, those closeout procedures could be different. With hospitality, they may be responsible for the cleaning up of sort of any non-perishable items maybe you're holding on to, because you know you can keep chips for a couple of months. So maybe you're holding on to it for the next craft services, other you know, cooked food and things of that nature. You're making sure that it's given out for anybody who wants it, or you're trashing it. You may be responsible for putting up the tables and chairs and taking out trash. Like this is the planning phase that you talk about of what you're doing when we're closing out. Who's responsible for walking back through and making sure that everyone has their personal items? You have that you left the space, as mom and them said, better than you received it.
No.
So no one says no to you the next time you go back and ask to use their space, right? Those different things, those different closure procedures or closeout procedures are a little bit different. In accounting, someone is collecting those receipts. Someone is seeing from what you budgeted, what you actually spent, is it over or under? And now they're giving you your new start total for episodes 2, and then they're gonna do that again for 3, 4, and 5.
Is it healthy for the person to have done all that you just said?
It isn't. And this goes back to picking your team and aligning yourself to the right people and going back to that charter. You said you was gonna do this, what's happening? You said you were gonna do that, what's happening?
We got a meeting coming up.
Well, good,
I was
see,
like, we gotta-
bring all of this up. Pull up any one of these articles that say which phase we in and who's doing what.
The original 4, we did sign a contract.
And then bring up the other however many who didn't.
People who have come onto the project that are not under that same contract agreement, they just came onto the project because they want to be on the project. So.
Mm-mm. You got to, in this meeting, say, we're moving into episode 2. And if you want to be on this project, this is the initial contract. Are you signing on board to this? Are you making an addendum to, an attachment to?
Like their first contract was specifically with Disney. When we did start the project, we did make a contract that everybody it didn't matter your position, everybody had to sign this contract.
Mhm.
And like, it was like things like, you know, if you're having a scheduled conflict, you need to let us know and ahead of event. Don't share any of the behind the scenes
Mhm.
until you've been given a proper, like, go ahead to do so. Yeah.
So as your classmates are saying, bring them both up and say, hey, this is what we signed and agreed to. How are we all holding ourselves up to this? If you could evaluate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, what would that look like? How and why? Like, these are the conversations you have to have. Tough, right, wrong, or indifferent. You have to have these conversations. You have to. At the end of the day, they're coming back to you as a producer. They are. They literally are. They're like, yo, what happened? What did you do? This is not just about, it's not just about one piece. That's the thing. How are you maintaining the integrity of the scope of the project initially presented? Yes, there are times when we have to pivot and shift, but it should not pivot and shift to the point where we cannot recognize what was approved or what happened here, unless there was a discussion to talk about that, right? But yes, any questions about project management? Did you learn something new? I hope you did. And I hope you can apply it starting tonight, starting tomorrow. Like literally think about the task in which you have for class, for an assignment, what have you, and which phase are you in? How much time are you allocating towards each phase or whatever the case may be? When do you circle back to do something? Why is this overlapping? Is it a good overlap? Is it because we just can't make a decision? Like what's happening? Right? And so as a producer, you have to look at it from this way. Yes, there's an overarching title of said production, The Wiz, said production, Once on This Island, said production, Sonnets and Souls, said productions, The Color Purple, said production, whatever new work, said production, such and such conference, said production, such and such sort of look and take on the African diaspora towards such what have you with the comparison of this in Latin America, this and whatever it is, there are particular tasks that are going to fall into those phases. What's happening, who's responsible for what, and how are you as a said producer maintaining your eyes on all phases, all personnel, all of the pennies, all of the things. It can be a lot, but this is why you have to look at it into this way. And even after looking at it into this way, there are other sort of Gantt charts and cheat charts that you can create for yourself to make sure that you are staying on task, on time, deadline, on budget, all the things. Yeah. Because some of this could involve if you're bringing someone from out of the country, do they have an active passport? If we're going out of the country or overseas, does everyone have, are they medically cleared with all the proper shots in there? Like it could get crazy depending the amount of tasks that have to be done and fall upon. And sometimes we get so lightly with, oh, I got PAs to get my lunch and boo. No, we got real work to do. Get your own sandwich on the way in. Like there is real work to do. Okay. All right, so that's it for today. There is not an assignment attached to this. Again, this is just the first 2 weeks of intro and saying like, hello, what's happening? What are you doing? Who are you? What is your mission? What are you attached to? And sort of the responsibilities that you have to do. Yes. Next week, we'll talk more about let me go here really quickly. Next week, we're going to talk week 3 about research and development. Yes. So we will meet on Monday, the 22nd. We will meet on Monday, the 22nd. And Wednesday, we're going to probably hop into Sonnets and Souls rehearsal. So I'll have more about that again. Sunday, Monday morning, look on Canvas for the announcement to see what's happening. But we are going to meet next week. Yes. Okay, thank you all so much. Have a good one.